Welcome to Giants Nation Show, presented by you, the people. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner. We've got Dan Duggan on the show talking about the Giants' QB plan, free agency plan, and what they plan to do in the draft. So excited to bring that to you. And then draft previews are really going to start cranking out. It's been obviously a hectic week and a half, and I just want to get back to watching draft profiles. But me and Grump are going to do a quarterback preview that'll be out this week. Travis Hunter film breakdown will be out tomorrow. So just really excited about all the love, support, and the content going to put out. Draft month is going to be awesome. So I'm really excited. Going to do another thank you here in a second, just because that's what we do at the show. Usually it's not this amount of people, but that's what we're gonna do. So again, appreciate you guys. The support, the views, the numbers have been awesome. Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Figure it out. Just figure it out, right? Like I don't need to explain much more. Figure it out. But before we get into the interview with Dan Duggan, and you could look at the timestamps. I have no idea how long this is going to take, but I feel like I organized it better to be quicker. This episode was brought to you by some special people. We got, and I'm going to look at the timer right now. Eric Williams, RBU Guy 27, TZA, Davis, Jack Donnelly 19, House Castle 19, Stephen Roden, Robbie, Ben Carl, Neil Sutherland, Zach Mahoney, Tim Howard. Wouldn't it be cool if it was just a USA goalie, Tim Howard? If it is you, please confirm. I'd love to talk. Bob, and also regular Tim Howard too. Bobby's Big Blue Ones, Ian Gerber, Mace, John, Matt Oates, B. Moore, Van Loo, Tyler Reed, Mark Reynolds, Mike Honcho, Mike Saluka, Brian McGee, Lucas Hajorthold, that's fake, Mark Sperduto, Squiddle Shepard, James Spadafora, Thomas, Ronald Holander, Morgan Styrone, Anthony Porchetta, Dan Hegman, Jason Perez, Mike Bowles, Emre Denise, Paul Bigelow, Jakob, David D'Arcy, Leon Weiland, Jeff P., Matt McGee, Andre Ward, Ryan Link, John Koliyoshi, Carson Ackley, Louis Foglia, Peter Siacho, Ethan Butler, Zach Jacobs, Nick Caloyeros, Ryan Schmier, Kevin Bohm, Drew Thornton, Robert Letizia, Jeffrey Graham, Kyle Hendrickson, Mantis, Bryden Lawson, Tyler LaMantia, Owen Driscoll, Chris Davidson, Paul B., Manny Madrigal, my guy, Brian Schaff, Mr. M., Adrian Michael Schwarzewski, Dor Bernstein, Scott Phillips, Robert L., Matt Froelich, Robert Bischoff, Moritz Weber, Bradshaw Fan 1981, Captain of All Roles, Jack R., Peter Geinther, No More Planes, Joshua Serafin, Dante, John Mitchell, Patrick Keatling, Joe Raviola, Kyle Oldham, Matthew Campbell, Tom Hubel, Jordan Velasquez, Jacob Denhofer, Yoandre Delgado, Endonai Alexandru, Shane O'Connor, Aaron Alwine, Grassman, Kyle, Stephen Early, JR, Dan Briggs, Christina M, LV718, The Cranky Fan, our guy, Dylan Paciulio, Post Graham, Mikey Bubbles, Bilal, Tom DeFranco, Alan, Tohir, Tony Spicali, Tim Clark, Eric Schwarzenegger, Dan Herbst, like Arnold, John Lavaca, James Kemmer, Mike Ford, my good friend, Jason, Aiden Owen, John Hom, Zach Balkler, Chris Galloway, Joe Pacheco Como, Pat Cupo, Frank Bagel, and Van Pelt. I got through that way quicker. Patreon.com/Giants Nation if you want to support. Appreciate the support. And if you're a Patreon and you haven't heard your name, one, it's probably because you were already a patron and we said your name when you originally signed up, or we'll figure it out. But we're gonna start sorting through the messages, sending out the stickers. They should be getting here on Tuesday, so we'll start sending those out. Merch is out today, so excited about that. I'm sure we'll put links and everything. So again, appreciate all the support. This draft month is going to be fun. This summer is going to be fun. I'm excited to see whatever we do in training camp. Still looking for a sponsor for the training camp package. Again, not sure if it's going to be our first sponsor because there's a couple weeks before this is rolled out, but I feel like we got one that I'm really, really excited about for the draft weekend and some other stuff throughout the summer. So really excited for everything. The support has been wonderful. If you sent me a message on social media, I haven't got back to you. It's not because I'm ignoring you. Well, I technically am, but I just have, it's been a lot. So again, appreciate everything. I'm looking forward to like a week or two from now when we're just in a groove. But again, everything has been great. I feel like I've used the word appreciate a million times, but I'm truly am. So uh, here's Dan Duggan. I will now welcome on to the Giants Nation show Dan Duggan of The Athletic. I went back and looked at the beginning of the other Giants Nation show. I was like, oh, Duggan was our early guest on, so catch up after 6 years. How you doing, man? How was were you down in Florida for the owners meetings?
I was, yeah, and that's always a pretty good trip. Like the combine's crazy and busy and hectic, and you're chasing people around all week. It's not that bad, the owners meetings, because basically, it's just the owners, the GMs, and the head coaches. So it's not agents and scouts and position coaches and everyone you're trying to track down. So basically, if you can like see Joe Shane and Brian Dable, like you're like, all right, like I know where they're at, and I don't have to really go play defense or do anything else like that. So that's always a pretty nice trip. Always at like some really swanky resort that, I would have no business going in otherwise. It was kind of fun to feel like you can fit in at a place like the Breakers in Palm Beach for a couple of days. And yeah, I mean, they have structured media availability. So yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it's a pretty good gig to get down there. You get half an hour with Dable. I think we got 20 minutes with Shane. You get any time with John Mara, which is a pretty stark departure from how he usually handles these owners meetings. So I guess maybe he's waiting till after the draft to weigh in because I think his feeling was he said plenty the day after the season ended, and I think he's gonna just sit back, let Shane and Dable's words and actions kind of carry them through the draft.
The way you describe Florida, I don't know why anyone would want to move up north. Um, what happened with Mara? Like, what was the? Did you guys get any reasoning on that, or was it just kind of like, nah, not happening?
Yeah, I mean the company line was basically what I said there is like they felt he had said enough, And I mean again, like he
And
doesn't
that's
usually,
true.
yeah, and he doesn't usually speak right after the season. So, he when I first came on the beat, he would speak the day after the season at the owners' meetings, first week of training camp. Like those three were locked in. And particularly with this regime, it's really scaled back. He hasn't done the, end of season. Those became kind of annual just because he was always explaining firing someone or hiring someone.
Yeah.
This regime, we haven't had those. He hasn't done the first day of camp every year. I think he did it this past year because he was at like a charity event or they did something at Hackensack Meridian where they unveiled something for the 100th year. But otherwise, I don't think he's really done that. So the owners' meetings was like the one staple where you'd get him. And he's such a staple there because you also got to keep in mind he has such a prominent role in the competition committee. So I mean, if I'm a national reporter, doesn't give a crap about like what the Giants do at quarterback, but I need to write about the tush push and replay assist and all that stuff. John Mara's a voice you would count on getting at the owners' meetings, and he didn't even do that. So he just totally took a step back. So again, I think it's really just a situation where he obviously laid down the gauntlet, the day after the season ended. And I think the feeling is, the work is incomplete. So I don't know if he wants to start talking because the thing with John that we all love that, I know fans don't always love, and maybe in the organization, like, all right, you're a little too candid. So maybe he's just saying, I'm not going to say anything while this process is ongoing. And then I assume at some point we'll get, his reflections on how it played out. Because again, there's still obviously a lot of balls up in the air, in which direction they're going to go.
Yeah, so I hate to get conspiracy theory into everything, especially with press conferences, but if there's one that I come away from as well, he did say we're getting one. He said a lot of things in that, but another thing he said was the priority is getting the quarterback of the future, and now we're in a place where a couple weeks out from the draft, and it feels like that may not be the case, at least in the first round for them. What from those owners meetings, whether you're talking with Shane, Dable, whoever, makes you like lean that they're possibly not taking a quarterback at pick 3?
Yeah, I mean that I came away very much leaning that way, and more from what Shane said, because Dable obviously is very good at saying nothing. He has a lot of practice doing it pretty much daily during the season. Shane, I mean, listen, everyone always says, "Oh, you're gonna believe what a GM says." No, if I say you're gonna take Shador Sanders with the third pick, no matter what Joe Shane says, I would not believe it because they're not going to answer a question directly like that. They're not dumb. They would have a little more guile than that. But when he starts talking and he gives more expansive answers, particularly on more general questions, I think that's where his true feelings seep out. I think it's a little bit almost like he's like preemptively defensive. And so I think his feeling is he's going to get crushed if they don't take a quarterback at 3. Like if Shador Sanders is there and they pass on him, everyone's gonna be like, oh my God, you're saying you take swings. And last year you passed on 3 quarterbacks, you passed on Sanders. So I think he has that feeling. He's someone who I think is very sensitive and very conscious of, perceptions and his image. So I think he's getting out ahead of it a little bit where he was so adamant that like you can't force it and it needs to be a guy you believe is going to be a franchise quarterback. So you can see that if they do pass on one, he'll be able to say, well, listen, I told you, like, it has to be the right guy. We didn't think there was the right guy there. And people again will say, well, whatever. That's just they're smoke screening you. I mean, that thing I think is the most overblown thing in this draft process. Everyone thinks of like this crazy game of spy games. I mean, it's football guys. Like, yes, there's a little bit of that, but not as much as everyone likes to think. But I go back to 2023. And that offseason, you'll remember everyone was talking about getting a number one wide receiver. That was like the buzz. You know, they remember they flirted with Jerry Jeudy and those guys at the trade deadline in 2022. It was like such a glaring need on the team. And he was adamant at the combine with like the same tone of like, you can't just make one appear. Because remember, that was a weak free agent class. And obviously they ended up trading for Waller because that was sort of the best they could do to get a number one receiving option at least. But he was, again, it felt like preemptive, like, I'm not going to just go spend on a guy who's not a true number one. I'm not going to make some crazy trade. And obviously it didn't come to pass. They did not, go crazy to get number one wide receiver. So I feel like I had deja vu when he was talking about the quarterbacks. There was not really any like optimistic view of it. Like, yeah, man, like I feel great about this class. There's probably going to be a quarterback there at 3 that is going to be the next Eli Manning. It felt more like, oh man, if you get this pick wrong at 3 with a quarterback, it can really be a bad thing for your organization, and we're not going to force it because we have Russ, we have Jameis Winston, we've set ourselves up. So that's how I came away from that meeting, and just sort of the way I feel like things have been trending is I would say not going Shador 3, and then listen, if in 3 weeks he proves us all wrong, I'll tip my hat to his master game of espionage. But I don't think that's how he operates as much as I think people assign that to every GM.
You talk about what Shane, said in those owner meetings, and obviously those aren't made into video. Is there anything that you're hearing like outside of Shane that would lead you to believe that, or you kind of not buy into some of that pre-draft stuff?
Well, no, I mean, I think there's been a lot of evidence. I know I've just from following you, you definitely have been on the belief that their actions tell you that they're not in love with any of these quarterbacks. And I think there's two prongs to it. It could be a situation where, yes, they love Cam Ward and they just have resigned themselves to the fact we can't get up to go get him. I mean,
Right.
obviously, it seems like Tennessee is dead set on him. I don't believe in coincidences. The day that they go to Miami's pro day and Joe Shane talks to Borgonzi, that night they signed Russell Wilson. So maybe he kind of got a firmer indication. Like, yeah, it's going to take, I think I saw someone put out 3 first. Like, I think we saw with last year with the Patriots, there is a walkaway number, and I would think that would be it for the Giants. So if Shane said, listen, I can't get Ward. So then, yeah, let's go get Russ. But you back it up to the Stafford pursuit. If you like, again, if Cam Ward might be in a separate bucket, you just can't get him. I think it's pretty good odds that Shador was going to be there at 3 throughout the entire process. There's been times where there was talk about Cleveland and times where they haven't, but you probably felt like it was at least a pretty realistic possibility. And the fact that they went for broke to get Stafford and all that would have cost in terms of, 50 plus million a year, probably a second round pick plus the fact that he's going to be your starter for at least 2 years if you make that type of commitment, that tells me you weren't like, oh, hey, plan B is Shador. Like those two things don't line up. But then I also, you go round and round in this process, obviously, because we're just reacting to things without actually having the conclusion for a couple more weeks. But I also think they've just kind of been spraying, solutions at quarterback here, where it's okay. Let's go on to get Stafford because he's the best guy possibly available. He'll help us win now. We think he's got a few years left. Okay, that doesn't work. Let's go get Rodgers because he's still the best of the bunch, and we can win with him this year, and then maybe we can still draft a quarterback. When that doesn't happen, so now it's like they're under like plan C or even D. I'd say plan C was probably trading up for Ward. So they're under like plan D. So I don't know that we can necessarily draw conclusions from how each step of that plan interacts. But again, if I feel like if they just absolutely love Shador, hands down, they probably wouldn't have gone through all those other routes. So that, again, that's an indication beyond just what, me trying to read Joe Shane's tenor this week.
Pre-draft, I feel like they've kind of backed into the correct decision for the long-term future, even though that means, not getting the best quarterbacks. The Stafford one, excuse me, the Stafford one is really the one that I think that makes me believe that they were not in on Shador. It's not just Stafford, but and then everything after that is like, okay, this is just making more and more sense, right? The pursuit to trade up for Cam Ward. But you could sell that as, well, they just like Ward better than Shador, but they like Shador. But Stafford was not coming here to pair with a quarterback. I know that there was, ideas of that being happening thrown out there. That wasn't happening, right? Stafford wasn't going to come here and get a Kirk Cousins pulled on him. So then that, and then the fact that I actually wanted Rodgers until it was like, oh no, this is just the same old Aaron Rodgers waiting game. Then let's get out of this business. And then either Russ or Jameis would have been, hey, yeah, you get those guys. Those guys are the guys you get to go with the rookie QB. But when you get both, it just makes me feel like they are, like you said, their actions are setting themselves up for something other than Shador Sanders at pick 3.
I'll jump in on Stafford too because I haven't talked to him too much this offseason. I feel like because that kind of happened and then the book closed pretty quickly. Um, I think it's funny. Joe Shane has gotten credited for not taking any, the Hail Marys, that line he used at the postseason presser. I mean, Stafford would have been the definition of a Hail
Oh
Mary.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. They backed into like the
Exactly.
smarter
Like the,
decisions.
the Rams kind of saved them because I mean I think that would have been I don't want to say catastrophic move because I think Stafford's a good quarterback, but like where would that have gotten you? Like okay, you go 9-8 this year. Next year you go 10-7, and then he's 39 and broken down. You've invested all this money, you've given up all these draft picks. So I think they tried to do the Hail Mary. It was incomplete, and like you said, they might have backed into a better plan. Um, and yeah, I totally agree with you with Stafford. They were the pairing with the third pick makes zero sense because the thing people always like to point to is like, oh, look what Green Bay did. Well, yes, they had that quarterback there forever, and they just brought a guy in later in the first round too, not the third pick, like in the 20s, and it was like a succession plan. You don't bring them in at the same time. That's the Atlanta plan. That's an absolute disaster because now they're stuck with paying Kirk Cousins whatever ridiculous amount of money it's going to end up being for basically what 13 starts he made last year. So that's not a blueprint to follow. It's like when people used to say, oh, just do what the Cardinals did. It's like, well, the better thing would be to not just completely botch the top 10 pick the year before. Like, yes, you can correct it the next year if you get it right, but it's not like a blueprint to follow. The Green Bay blueprint is totally different from where the Giants have been operating. So let's say you traded 34 to get Stafford. So you're going to use the third pick on a quarterback who's going to sit for 2 years. You don't have the second round pick. So now you're going to build around this 37-year-old quarterback with all, late day two and day three picks. That doesn't make any sense. So no, I'm totally with you on that.
Yeah, and I understand the idea of like, well, once you get that quarterback, you're just kind of happy that you're there. But like the path does, like the Falcons screwed up. I don't understand this. Oh well, look at Michael Penix, who again, if there's any topic I get more frustrated is Michael Penix victory laps after he had led the league in missed throw rate. Um, but like they're wasting so much money. Like you tell me they didn't think that they could get Michael Penix at pick 8? Like I don't believe it. So yeah, I agree with you at that. But everything's been so quarterback heavy. I want to talk about some of the other things. What did you think of their free agency plan outside of the quarterback position?
Yeah, it's funny because it's totally taken such a backseat to the quarterback pursuit. I'm that first week of free agency, just like NFL Network, I can like, you know, recite the commercials by heart because you just had it on the background all day to see it, and every report was just the same with the Rodgers updates or non-updates. So yeah, like I think obviously Adebo was a guy who made a ton of sense. They needed to get a cornerback, obviously, and it's funny because I put on my 10-step plan at the start of every offseason. And so I can't criticize them when they follow one of my steps. So it was brilliant chess move by Shane there to sign the guy I identified. Because the thing I liked about Adebo, I thought it'd be a little cheaper, coming off the leg injury, but I like the fact that he's young. Like he's second contract. You're building with him, and maybe you really hit something here and he ascends. Whereas like, the older guys, Charvarius Wards, DJ Reed's like, yes, we know they're good players. Again, I thought the price point would be a little higher for those guys, but they're also older, so you're not really building anything with them. They're built to step into a ready-made team. So I like the Adebo signings. I think there's potential for him to still be ascending, especially if he comes back healthy. Holland, I think that was a pivot. I think if you go back into the timeline, I don't know if it's Will Fries or Freeze. I've actually never
Freeze.
Freeze.
I
Okay.
had figured that out. Yeah.
It's one of those ones you see all the time. But yeah, I mean, I think that obviously if they went for him, they weren't going to have enough money to go also to spend top dollar on a safety. So I think once they struck out on him, they pivoted to Holland and Holland, who's I think he's gonna be fun for us because he's pretty open on his podcast. Basically said like he didn't hear from the Giants till 11:30 that Monday night, so it wasn't as if they had been on him throughout the process. So that definitely feels like a pivot. I mean, listen, I said it at the time and people went nuts, but I don't know how you look at it as it's like an overcorrection to the McKinney thing where you let a safety go basically and all you heard was positional value because then people said, oh, well, they just don't want to pay McKinney. It's like, well, then that's terrible evaluation because he's a first team all pro. Like he's really good. So if it was just a McKinney problem, that's worse to me than saying it's a positional value thing. Like, and okay, people are saying Holland's a little bit cheaper. McKinney's a better player. Like that seems to matter to me more than like $1 million per year. At the same time, he's definitely an upgrade on Jason Pinnock. He's another young guy, so I like that part. You're just a little curious why his play kind of tailed off last year. I know there's some injuries that were part of the factor. He switched a lot of defenses, but again, another guy, if you get him in, he could ascend, and you can at least see the blueprint there where they could have a secondary that is super young, together for a long time, and all guys with some pedigree. So I do like how that defense is coming together. I would have liked to see a little more up front. I think that they're still just kind of believing the run defense will be better without actually investing personnel to make it so.
It's all right. I took 3 defensive tackles in my mock draft this morning, so we're good.
Okay, well, I mean, and listen, I think that's definitely on the table here. I mean, obviously, what they do at quarterback will dictate kind of how those early day two picks go, but I'd be stunned if they come out of day two without using one of those picks on a defensive tackle. And then offensively, I mean, listen, we knew this from going back to, Dable saying, look what happens to good quarterback play after the Colts game. Shane, the bye week presser, basically putting it all on Daniel Jones. We know they assigned all of the blame internally on Daniel Jones last season. Now, I think Daniel Jones was terrible and shoulders a lot of that blame. I'm not convinced that like just replacing him for Russell Wilson is going to take the 31st offense in the league and make it top 10. Now, could they get to like 20? Sure. I think that's probably a reasonable expectation. And maybe that's good enough if the defense has improved that much. But I expected a little bit more there offensively. I was, again, stole my plan. I said to re-sign Slayton. I thought there was zero chance it would happen because it just felt like, I don't know. He can't get out of here for whatever reason. He must really like, he signed a long-term lease a couple of years ago or something. I'm stunned that he wanted to be back. Didn't feel like they would pay him. Maybe his market was softer than anticipated again, which had happened to him 2 years ago. But so I liked that re-signing. But still, you just look at the skill players, the exact same. Look at the offensive line, the exact same. Now, maybe you bring in a draft pick who can bump out Greg Van Roten at right guard. But as we sit here today, it's a lot of continuity for a really bad offense. So again, you're hoping the quarterback makes that huge difference. I just don't know that Russell Wilson, compared to Daniel Jones, makes a huge difference. I think it'd be better, but I don't know if it's enough to make the types of improvements I think they need to personnel-wise on offense.
Well, if healthy, which again is my least favorite, what's a preposition, before in the off season because you can't really guarantee that. In fact, they were fairly healthy last year outside of Andrew Thomas, which obviously is a big part of that. Like they are a quarterback away on offense. The issue is we throw in this magic quarterback what quarterback are they away from and or what quarterback are we talking about and what exactly are they away from? Are they a quarterback away from being, like you said, a top 5 contender offense? Yeah, if you get a top 5 quarterback, sure. Is that going to be Russell Wilson? Absolutely not. Is there going to be a quarterback in the draft? Probably not. But they are, quarterback away. You can kind of say that for almost everything. And this quarterback away, even if it's a good quarterback, we schedule them down for no bad games in the season. Like good quarterbacks don't have bad games. Like, oh well, if you had a good quarterback this game, Josh Allen has bad games. Like you're not going to get great quarterback play every game. So I don't hate the offense when you look at the 10 outside of the quarterback, but like I said, the injuries and that quarterback is not really there, even though Russ is an improvement.
Yeah, no, that's a great point because that is the thing everyone did last year. I mean, obviously, I guess you throw the Minnesota game out, but basically saying they'd be 5-1 if they had a better quarterback. It's like, why? Because Russell Wilson didn't have any bad games last year. Because even Matthew Stafford didn't have any bad games last year. Aaron Rodgers. I mean, whoever you're going to get in there was going to have a bad game here or there. It's not like Daniel Jones was the only quarterback who ever plays poorly. So no, I agree with you there. My thing with the offense, I think they're betting on the upside of a lot of these guys that are young, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad bet. Like I think Neighbors, you can fully say like he's there. Like we know he's a number 1 wide receiver
Right.
minimum. And now the question is, does he become like a Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase tier number 1 wide receiver? And again, I think that's very much on the table. And I think that's where the quarterback upgrade, you might see a guy like him go from whatever it was last year, 1,100 yards to like 18. Like that's on the table. I think an upgraded quarterback probably helps him more than anybody just because he's such a good player already. He can become, truly great. But it's like, there's a lot riding on their belief in like Theo Johnson and Tyrone Tracy and Wan'Dale Robinson. I think all those guys have shown flashes, but I've been around long enough to know like you can't just look at the top end you saw from a rookie projected and almost to the quarterback discussion we're having, and they're going to play like that every game. Like Tyrone Tracy had a couple games where you're like, whoa, like 100 plus yards, looked amazing, and then he had a bunch of games where he didn't do very much. And like Theo Johnson had a couple games before he got hurt where oh man, look at some catches down the seam. He had a lot of games where he looked totally overwhelmed, like, as a blocker, had some drops. Yes, I think it's realistic to expect some improvement in year 2 from those guys. I do think people need to just temper expectations because the worst thing could happen is that Tyron Tracy is like a similar season to last year. People be dumping on him saying, what a disappointment.
Yeah.
Like he's a 5th round guy. Like again, you can hit on those guys and maybe he takes a huge jump, but it feels like they're kind of counting on it. And when you hear, all the quarterbacks come in and talk and they just run through the roster of like how great all these, like, when you got Jameis Winston calling Jalen Hyatt an emerging superstar, it's like, okay, let's slow down on the sales pitch here that you clearly got when you came on your free agent meeting. We got to have some perspective here and some reality checks, but I think that's the big thing. The young skill guys, if they all develop, on the trajectory like this going up, then man, yeah, watch out. It doesn't usually happen that way. Like even Darius Slayton had a great rookie year. Like every year since then has basically been the same. And there's nothing wrong with that. But that could just be who Theo Johnson is last year. Like a little bit better on that. Tyron Tracy could be a little bit better on that. They got to figure out what the hell Wan'Dale Robinson is because I saw those, Warren Sharp put out some stats on Twitter where it's like he set all these records in terms of targets, but limited yardage and all that. Like that can't be his role. They got to, get a little more out of him.
Basically the worst two QBs out there for him, and Russell Wilson and Jameis as well too.
Exactly. And then Neighbors is the one guy where I'm saying, yeah, go nuts. Like have this unlimited ceiling because I do think he has that potential.
Yeah, I mean, I remember talking with you in the van last training camp because this is just what we do with rookies every year, and we're talking about cornerback too, and it's like I don't know if cornerback one is fully locked in either, right? Like Deontay Banks had some flashes, but if he plays like he did last year and then covering wide receiver ones, we're going to be pretty down on him, and that's exactly what happened. Jalen Hyatt, had 3 games that were really good the year before. That doesn't cut it in year two, and they didn't even get any of those games in year two. So, like you said, Neighbors and even Tracy, even if Tracy ends up being like a RB2, like that's a hit of a 5th round
Yeah,
pick, I
sure.
feel like. But like you said, he's not hasn't shown that he's this bell cow top 15 back in the NFL, even though there is nice signs there. And then the other guys like Theo, like Newbin and Phillips again had moments. Phillips definitely in the run game, but like they had a combined 1 interception and 1 pass breakup, says a 2nd and 3rd round DB. So like you just need more out of those guys, and hopefully they get that. Um, I want to touch on the Slayton thing. Just why did everyone believe Slayton was gone, and like why is he back? Like he's friendly with you guys. Like why is he back?
So I can't answer that second part. I haven't talked to him. I'll be, in full disclosure. I don't know if anyone has because I haven't seen anybody like kind of come up with his side. Obviously, he gave a press conference, which didn't really have like super great insight on exactly why. Maybe I just moved. Maybe he just hates moving, which I could sympathize with.
I feel him.
What's that?
You're just setting me up for subtle shots. I feel him on
Oh,
that
sorry.
one.
Yeah. Yeah, relocating, but yeah, so I don't know. We'll talk to him this spring and because you have to ask some of these questions a little more candidly away from like the cameras to get probably the true answer. But why do we think he wouldn't be back? I mean, there was no signs that they valued him. You go back and I don't know, your listeners will go, I don't need to go chapter and verse, but you go back to that first year, pay cut, buried on the depth chart, plays really well. They, kind of lets him go test free agency. The market's weak, so they okay, we'll give you, 2 years, 12 million, which is pennies for a solid wide receiver. Then last offseason, I can't call it a holdout, but he skips the voluntary workouts and it wants a raise. If you valued him, why wouldn't you just give him a raise? He's been a good player. He's been a good locker room guy. You can lock him in. I guarantee it would have been for less money than he got this offseason, so it would have been smart business. They showed zero interest. They gave him like token incentives. He had no chance of reaching. So that kind of felt like the final straw. And then at the trade deadline, when they didn't trade him, it checks at the time. There have been no talks about negotiations. Joe Shane actually revealed at the owners' meetings that they did try to do something at the bye week, which was right after the trade deadline. I wasn't aware of that, so that was news to me. Slate never shared that, but so it just felt like there was at no point I'm like they're going to pay him what wide receiver 2 money is, but that was a pretty good deal for the team. I feel like it's less than Mooney and Gabe Davis got a year ago, and I would say he's probably in their ballpark. But then obviously he was a big Daniel Jones guy with Daniel Jones being gone, and just like I don't understand why he would want to come back to this uncertain quarterback situation. At the time, they didn't have any of these guys. I mean, now maybe you could have sold him on Russ, or he's going to be here, or if Russ happened first, you could say, okay, well Russ will be great because he's a deep ball guy. But like Buffalo signed Josh Palmer for like the same deal. Like, wouldn't you rather? I mean, again, maybe they didn't want Darius Slayton, but if I'm Darius Slayton, I would rather Buffalo, or the Chargers desperately need wide receiver help. Wouldn't you want to play Justin Herbert? Like there's a million scenarios that would seem like it would be a better fit for him. So again, I don't know what his market was. So maybe that's where we overestimated his market, and the Giants offer was the best one. So he said, yeah, screw it. I'm gonna snatch that up. But I would have thought he would have had a decent market, about what he got here. I think he probably could have got elsewhere. So the fact that either that didn't happen or he didn't take it, I don't have a strong answer on why that's the case.
Yeah, getting him the year after Gabe Davis and Mooney got those deals, and the same year that Josh Palmer and De'Ami Brown got deals like they got, it's like crazy. Which again, I was on, again, like you, I was on bring Slayton back. I didn't want to trade him at the trade deadline because I wanted to re-sign him. Um, and I'm very excited for him to be like second in Giants receiving all time in a couple years, depending on who's at quarterback. Who do you think is the pick at three? And I'll even change that. Let's just say that if you probably don't think it's quarterback from the last answers. Let's say just pretend Shador goes two and Abdul Carter and everyone's available. Who do you think would be their preference?
Yeah, that's tougher because I'm operating on the impression that Abdul Carter's goes too, because that seems to be like the national, Schefter and those guys have been saying is the likelihood. So in that instance, I definitely think it would be Hunter. Hunter versus Carter, I don't have a great feel for at this moment. So then I would say if it was me, I would take Carter because I just
Me
like
too.
I get the Hunter, like, oh, he's so versatile. Like pass rushers just like are game changers. Like tell me what position Hunter's even going to play at an all pro level. Cause I mean, the fact that he can do both at a high level is great. He's gonna have to pick one. So using the third pick on a cornerback who's kind of small. Like, I mean, again, and listen, if that's what they end up with, that's great. I'm not downplaying him, but I just know what Carter's going to be. Like, I know I'm going to put him on the edge and he's probably going to get double digit sacks yearly. Like, to me, that is a bigger slam dunk type projection. Whereas with Hunter, I think the ceiling is, off the charts, but you still have to like know how you're going to use him, know how you're going to fit him in. Whereas with Carter, it's plug and play. It's, any DC can figure out how to use a guy who can just get after the quarterback. So that would be my lean there. I don't have a good feel on theirs, and maybe I don't have to have one because, again, it just seems like all signs point to him being gone at three. So then I just think it becomes which of the Colorado guys are they going to take? The guy throwing the touchdowns, the guy catching them, and I think it'd be Hunter in that scenario.
I just thought of a question because the Dable play calling thing is kind of funny. It's like, oh, once again, not. But the difference is though, Dan, we kind of knew Kafka was going to be it early, and then last offseason we knew it was going to be Dable, and it was a joke. Like, oh, we can't figure it out. Do you have any inkling on who will be calling the plays?
I think it's gonna be Dable. Yeah, it's not as strong as I had last year. Where it's like when the last season ended, it was like everyone on the staff knew like he's taking it over because the way things had ended, it was kind of just kind of a mess, obviously with the Wink stuff and all the tumultuousness that was going on. He was gonna take it over. Yeah, this year it's been very interesting because if you just play back the clock and play back the tape, and I'm obviously like paid to parse these things. John Maris said he spoke first. He said when they had their big, powwow that Friday before the finale, where it seemed like Dable had to basically make his case to keep his job. Mara brought up, what about not doing play calling? You think that would be the best option? I'm not going to tell you have to do that, but just something to consider. Dable came out an hour or two later and said, "Oh yeah, I brought that up to John," and someone called him out on it. I said, "Wait, John just told us he brought it up," and Dable was like, "Oh yeah, I don't know. We had talked a lot about a lot." Like, he gave a very like just convoluted answer. But then he made a point again at the owners' meetings. Again, that topic came up, and no one mentioned the Mara part of it all. And he said, like, basically, just to be clear, I brought that up. So he's really pushing that. So it feels like he's setting it up that he's not disobeying his boss when he keeps the role. It's more like him saying, "Yeah, I thought a lot about it, but I think this is the best thing for us." I mean, he said, last year, obviously we're taking note of this thing. Like, he was the one always on the walkie-talkie at practices that were open. So, there was no signs that it was going to be Mike Kafka. He already, again, like going back to one of the first answers here, they're very conscious of optics. So he already said this to get ahead of it. So we're not reporting it like on day one of OTA, Mike Kafka has the walkie-talkie. He already said there will be times when Kafka has it. So I think he's going to at least do a little bit of like a dog and pony show of like, oh, I don't know, we're really debating it, and they'll have them each do it. I wouldn't be surprised if like he does the first preseason game, Kafka does the second, and then they make the decision. I think it'll end up being Dable, and again, I think they'll kind of go through this whole charade, but I can't say that definitively because I do think they're at least going to give the appearances of it being an open dialogue. But I don't know, just the way he's very clearly said, "Oh, I brought that up to John," and like I think he again sort of like this the Shane thing, preemptively getting it out there. So when he does, becomes maintain the play calling, we can't say, "Oh, well, didn't John ask you to give this up?" He's already said many times now that it was his idea to potentially give it up.
You bring up something else that I thought of is we forget last season ended so terribly, right? Where most people thought they should be fired. Um, and now they're in this weird quarterback situation where they don't have the number one pick and just like, oh, it's going to take Cam Ward. And we've seen them being on Stafford and Rodgers and stuff. Maybe you don't know, maybe it's hard to know this. Do you know, like, is it still Mara's like got, full go, do whatever you want? Or do you think he's more involved and those conversations besides just Saquon Barkley?
Well, that's why it would have been nice to speak to him at the owners' meetings, and probably why he didn't make himself available. Because yeah, I don't know. Because again, like he's not the greatest poker player, so we would know where he stands on things. But I'll say this, the big word after the season ended when they were justifying bringing them back, or Shane was talking about coming back, the plan they have. There's no chance in hell that the plan was Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston on, we're recording this on April 4th or whatever it is. Like, there's no way they went to John Mara and sold them on the fact that, listen, we can have Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston at quarterback next year. So, I don't know where John's feelings are in the moment because, again, the draft is still to come. Maybe they sold him on Shedeur Sanders and everything's going according to plan. And they take him and it's like, hey, this is what we said we're going to do. John, you're on board with in December. Here we go. But it just feels like I'd be very curious for his like in the moment reaction to how things have played out. Because I think the Stafford thing, like, listen, hey, Joe Shane says he's going to take swings. Yeah, that's kind of, I wouldn't say it's an embarrassing miss, but it was like they put so much into that, and it feels like it was like, bro, he's not going to date you. Like it wasn't going to happen, but they really were courting him so hard. The Rodgers thing, that's the thing I think John Mara wouldn't love. Like we're putting ourselves out there for this guy who's kind of got all this baggage, and then he kind of leaves us at the altar. So yeah, I'd be very curious to see, how he feels about things. Again, that's why I think why it's intentional. He's not weighing in now because it is an incomplete process. But I think it'd be hard to evaluate what they've done compared to probably what was presented in December and say, man, they're crushing it. Like this is exactly how we wanted this offseason to go, how we wanted to feel. Because I'm sure trading up to one was probably presented in that meeting. And then, obviously the Stafford and even Rodgers probably were presented. And they're 0 for 3 on those. So maybe he can get comfortable with the idea of Russell Wilson and a quarterback taken at 34 or late in the first with the trade up, something like that. But I don't think that's what he went into this offseason expecting them to deliver.
That's again, you keep reminding me of a question. Is there any chance that if they don't go quarterback at 3, that they're looking at that at pick 34 or like a trade back up into the first round? Because that's what I kind of don't want.
Yeah, I think that's 100% the way they go. Like, there's no way there's no way they just don't take a quarterback. Like, so if they're sitting there at 3 and they don't love Shedeur and they do think Hunter is like this transcendent player, they take him. There's no way they say, okay, next we're going to get defensive tackle, then we're going to get guard. Like they're going to say, now the next and only priority is quarterback, at least in my opinion. And again, maybe it's still an issue where you can want whatever you want. If the other teams are going to want to try and trade up for Dart or for, Shuck or any of these guys who'd be in that next tier. You got a team like Pittsburgh looming, I think, at 21, who's very much, in the same kind of boat as the Giants. They're still waiting on Rodgers, but they'd be in the quarterback market. So I'm not saying they can pull it off, but I would 100% think that if they get a position player at 3, then priority number 1 becomes trading up for a quarterback. Because I don't even think sitting at 34 and getting one is even realistic. Because again, there's Cleveland's in front of them. If they don't take a quarterback, they're a team that could trade up. I think you're going to have to get up, and it makes sense just for the 5th-year option from where they're sitting at 34. And I think they can rationalize this. Like, listen, we took the best player on our board at number 3. And sure, we gave up a third and a future third, or whatever the package ends up being, but we didn't mortgage the future because we didn't give up a first or anything like it would take to get up to Cam Ward, which obviously again it's a different evaluation there because of the prospect tier. But in terms of like what we're giving up, yes, okay, it sucks we have to move up, but we didn't give up like something that's going to drastically hurt our future outlook. So yeah, I think if they go Hunter at 3, then I definitely think a quarterback with that next pick wherever it falls is very much on the table.
Last question. What do you enjoy like covering press conference wise? The Russell Wilson perfect answers or the Jameis Winston goofy answers?
Oh, definitely Jameis. I mean, that Russell Wilson one was like, it was a little tough to take. I mean, when every answer was like this 4-minute, felt like he was reading off a teleprompter.
It was 25 minutes, man. That was hard to get through. Like I said,
Yeah.
same thing.
The biggest loser of the Russell Wilson signing as a PR intern to have to transcribe all of his press conferences because man, they're going to be getting carpal tunnel typing those up. That's like we haven't seen anybody like that since Joe Judge. But listen, I mean, the thing about these two guys, two things. The first thing is they're totally different personality wise. From anyone the Giants have had a quarterback, certainly since I've been on the beat. And actually, I'd say 3 things. They're very different from each other. No, wait, that was 2 things. Sorry. So they're very different from each other, though. So like they have bigger personalities, but they're totally different. Like Russell is like so polished and And they're so established though. That was the third thing. They're both very well established. They're not rookies coming in where we don't really know what to expect. Like there's a book on both these guys. You know, everyone saw Jameis at the Super Bowl and being all he's really leaning into this whole goofy thing with the
Yeah.
pre speeches and the interviews and stuff. And then Russ, I mean, his whole sort of like I'm trying to just choose my words carefully with a guy I've never met. But let's just be honest, he has that phony vibe to
Politician.
him. Yeah, and that's come up a lot. So it's not like me saying anything no one's ever heard before. Like it happened in Seattle, it happened in Denver. Even, I think it's just sort of kind of the aura that's around him. So you see that opening presser, and it was like, yeah, this kind of confirms a lot of what's been said about him. And Jameis, like I think if Jameis was the starter and doing that all the time, that probably where, kind of like where it's welcome a little bit. But I think it was kind of fun and refreshing. I think he'll be an interesting guy to cover. Interesting kind of the word I would use with him because like it's or entertaining because it's like when he throws picks, it's not gonna be quite as fun when he's on your
Thank
team.
you. Thank you.
But like when you're watching him from sound bites from afar, it's super entertaining. Or you watch the game in the snow and he's got like 400 yards or whatever. Like that's fun. But the day in and day out with him probably wouldn't be as fun if the team's 2-7 and he's got more picks than touchdowns. But yeah, definitely very very different personalities. But Jameis I think is a little more charismatic and comes across a little more natural. Even though I'm sure he's kind of putting on a little bit of a shtick too. Like I think he's leaning into it, like I said. But definitely I think a little bit more. I think he's gonna be a fan favorite. Like I think the first time Russell Wilson, throws two picks, people are gonna be chanting for Jameis just because they want that fun and that personality.
Oh yeah, that's obvious. I'm a big fan of Instagram Reels and like the QB room of like Russ, Jameis, DeVito Instagram Reels that people made were pretty good. Dan, thank you for jumping on. Everyone go cover you at the Athletic at DD or D Duggan 21. You got anything coming down the pipe that people might be interested in?
It's just gonna be all draft stuff now. It's like we kind of close the book on free agency. I actually have a little vacation coming up to Florida, so it's like,
Where in? I,
Orlando.
oh, okay. I'm an hour east of there. You gonna hit any of the beaches or anything?
I don't know the full itinerary. We just got to get away. Like I said, we just moved, and nothing better to do than go spend more money on a vacation. I don't know exactly who's our accountant, but that's what we're doing just to get some sunshine. But yeah, so that's my main thing I'm looking forward to. And then I come back from that, and it'll be all draft, and then obviously the draft will be here before we know it. So that'll be plenty of content coming out of that.
Yep. All right, Dan, appreciate you jumping on. Enjoy Florida, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good. Thanks.
All right, thanks to Dan Duggan for jumping on the show again. Go support early supporters, right? Early supporters of the show. Dan Duggan was at A1 from before I was even doing Giants Nation show. Before I was with John Boy Media, he would come on Simple Man Radio, which had like 80 downloads. So like super generous with his time. Which is very much appreciated. So go tell Dan, thanks for coming on the show because that stuff matters, right? As we try and grow and get bigger and better and stronger as a Giants Nation show family for life. Appreciate you guys. We'll see you on the next one. Until then, let's go Big Blue.